I hate to have to report this. The breaking news just into CNN is that actor Robin Williams is dead at the age of 63 from an apparent suicide.
Every time there's a mass shooting or unfortunately a celebrity suicide or high-profile suicide, it's always in the news. But the issue is that we don't continue that conversation.
Actor Lee Thompson Young was found dead in Los Angeles just a couple of hours ago.
People look at those that have died by suicide or those with a mental illness as if they have a lack of willpower.
It is not correct to say committed suicide. It is death by suicide, because you never want someone to put blame on the person who died.
Last week, the 11-year-old decided she couldn't be strong anymore.
I think the way to break the stigma is so easy, and it's just we need to talk about it.
If you are reading this, it means that I have committed suicide. Those words written on a Warren County teenager's Tumblr page.
After my dad died, I didn't reach out or ask for help or learn anything about his death and the illness that he lived with for 47 years.
18-year-old Conrad Roy III sat, running a gas-powered water pump inside his pickup truck.
You need to get people that struggle with depression or want to learn more about it, or people that just care. And everyone needs to sit down in a room and talk about it.
Robin, what happened? What did you do?
I'm going to commit to be an ally for those that live with mental illness.
Hit by a big truck on an Ohio interstate in an apparent suicide.
When we look at these other issues or forms of death or illnesses that we're not talking about, and that's the point of the Commit campaign, is we're going to talk about it. The Commit campaign is a photo-based social media movement to end the stigma associated with mental health, mental illness, and suicide. With that being an online social media platform, that's just how our generation and generations to come will be connecting. So we really do think that this is the best way to have this conversation. People can get involved with the Commit campaign by writing the word commit on your hand, pledging to the Commit campaign. So what you do is you write the word commit on your hand and you hold it up and take a picture, take a selfie or have somebody take a picture, post it to your social media and write I commit, and then tag the Commit campaign, and then you can list out why you commit. Christina is a survivor of suicide loss, having lost a couple of friends. And me, myself, I've lost my father. It's just over 8 years ago. He died by suicide. So we both have a personal connection to it. After my dad died, I didn't reach out or ask for help or learn anything about his death and the illness that he lived with for 47 years. Until 5 years later. I was quiet. I went to college. I didn't share with anybody. And that was all due to the stigma. It's because I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel like I lived in a place where I could reach out and express myself. The conversation that we have in society has a lot to do with that stigma. So saying things like committed suicide, right there, that's saying that that person made a choice. They committed to their death.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, so that's done. It actually all started last fall in about November. We wanted to do something ourselves, and we wanted to do something that was not just awareness, but it was really talking about the stigma, the fact that some people don't want to talk about it, can't talk about it, or don't know that anything in regards to mental health awareness. With it being 2015, everything is photo-based. It's always, people use the phrase, oh, Pixar, it didn't happen, or Analytically on social media, what gets the most traction are photos. They're brought up on people's newsfeed more. And also photos have such a huge impact because it's your identity behind a photo. With all that being said, we knew that we wanted to be a photo-driven social media campaign because we want it to go viral. So if you actually go to our website, we have a series of pledges, and it's basically saying that I'm going to commit to breaking the stigma of mental health behind mental health and mental illness.
This is a subject that everybody wants to talk about, but nobody knows how to talk about it. In putting on all of these events, Christina and I started to talk about the stigma and that just having that conversation was difficult. So we decided to partner up and create the Commit campaign, a campaign where you have a community where you can come and talk with other people that have either struggled personally with suicidal ideation. You can come and talk with other people that have lost somebody to suicide. You can come and talk or just support the cause.
The reason that Kelsey and I truly wanted to do this, we have paired together with so many different events this past year, and we really decided all the organizations we work with are so truly incredible. We see so many incredible things on social media every day, but do we see real photos on how people are really doing? We normally don't. And so that was something that why we chose a photo-driven campaign. Because we want people to be raw, we want people to be real.
What we wanted to do is launch the campaign in our state of Arizona and in our community in a way that broke stigma right then and there. And in fashion and in music and in entertainment, it's not talked about a lot. We thought it would be a great industry, those would be great industries to break through with the stigma. So everything kind of just fell into place. We had lines that reached out and people that would say, hey, I heard that you're doing this and want us to get involved. So before we knew it, we had everything in line from a silent auction to a concert to a fashion show with 3 different lines of vendors throughout the valley. Our first group of models was the Miss America girls and all the title holders for Arizona. So that included Miss Arizona, Christina T.H.O., Miss Maricopa County, Miss Phoenix, Miss Scottsdale, about 14 different title holders. And then our second 2 groups, we decided to put those together and call them the Arizona influencers. So those are people that are local celebrities, local athletes, TV, news anchors throughout the valley, but they're also those that have, those were people that have lost somebody by suicide and those that have struggled with the stigma of mental health in the community themselves. And in that, they are influencers. On the night of the fashion show, we had Shayla, who's a 14-year-old young woman, get up there and share her experience with her personal experience with suicidal ideation and her attempt.
I got to the point that I was so sick of who I was, and I felt very down, like I didn't matter anymore.
And after, it was just a quiet moment. It was after the show. I was talking to her, and she was a little bit teary-eyed, and she was just saying, how powerful and emotional, but good that made her feel. It was her first time ever sharing her story. And I said, are you serious, on stage? It was the first time in front of all of those people. And I almost had to give her kind of a, I don't know if you know what you just did, pep talk, but there were 47-year-old men in that audience. There's 24-year-old college students that have been living with maybe those same struggles that have never reached out. And hearing that 14-year-old girl on stage share her story and then share her story of recovery and hope probably gave those people the willpower to reach out.
People are afraid of what they don't understand. And I just didn't feel like I was worthy enough. And it would be to the point where it was like I was so depressed and I was so down, like there's just this sense of like hopelessness and it's hard to get up in the morning. And I remember my senior year of high school, it was my last year and I was just down as usual, and I said, I don't know how I'm gonna make it through another year. Like something has to change this year, otherwise I'm not gonna make it. I mean, I'm not ashamed in the fact that I struggle with things that millions of other Americans deal with, and there's no point in being ashamed of that. Like, own up to who you are and try and better yourself. Do what you can to better yourself. I would classify it as this kind of situational depression and anxiety. I moved to Arizona when I was a sophomore in high school. That transition was extremely difficult because my freshman year of high school was the first time I finally had a group of friends, because I've never really had great friends or really solid group, and when I transferred, I pretty much lost everybody. It was really difficult at first. I felt very isolated and ostracized. There was this sense, this lingering sense that I was almost like a freak in the decisions I had chosen to make in my life, and the fact that I wanted more out of life. And because I wanted more, that was abnormal. There are some days where it's like the depression does win, and it's like I don't really want to hang out or talk to anybody. And when they ask, when you see them the next time and they go, well, why didn't we hang out? Like, you have to catch yourself. You either find yourself lying to them, which is easier than explaining to them, well, I was depressed. Because I feel like that word gets thrown around a lot too. It's also stigmatized because of what is seen in the media. And we also live in a culture that doesn't embrace people with mental illness. We ostracize them.
Yes. Oh, it's all blurry. There we go.
I'm still here. Like, I can deal with it. Like, you will be okay. Like, I don't know. I choose not to give up. What I found is that when I put more effort into seeing my people, and when I see them on a regular basis or make an effort, there's no depression and anxiety. And it's funny because the depression and anxiety drives you. It tells you, no, I don't want to go out. No, I don't want to deal with those people. But what I've learned in therapy is that you need to do the opposite of what your body is telling you to do. And at the end of the day, when you go force yourself to get out and do those things, you feel 100% better. Running, especially when I've had a really bad day. There's just something about being able to just like hit the pavement and let those endorphins kind of hit your senses, and it kind of helps you forget and deal with things. And the other way is probably, just going outside, being active. And I've also been to therapy.
It's awesome. A little hot. Personally, I'm a little out of shape. It's been a while, but it still feels amazing. So yeah, stay tuned.
Why am I sweating so much? I'm barely moving. Well, thank you guys for coming out and supporting. Help yourself to all the treats and everything. You've got different chemical imbalances in your brain. There's a bunch of different factors for each type of illness. That being said, when 90% of people that die by suicide, they have some sort of mental illness, some sort of diagnosable mental illness. So for those 90% of people, it's not a choice. You wouldn't look at somebody with a heart disease and say, you willed that heart attack on yourself, or somebody with cancer and say, you passed out yourself there. Nobody does those things consciously, so we need to look at mental illness, the symptoms, and unfortunately, the death, suicide, as not a choice. It's unfortunately an illness. Zumba's really one of those activities that you don't have to be the best at. I mean, we've got guides here, we've got people that are not the most coordinated. We wanted to do something that was fun and upbeat and a way to gather anybody in the community. It's great to take these kinds of events and also do them outside. I mean, everything has, from the inception of the Commit campaign, it really was all in Scottsdale. But the point of it is to break the stigma everywhere, online, across the valley, ideally across the nation. So bringing it downtown and bringing it to a different community, the downtown Phoenix community, having people that are naturally here on a Saturday morning, that's going to help break the stigma. I've had multiple people come up to me today and say, what's going on? What's this for? And having that chance to just have that three-minute conversation with them, they're going to hopefully go online and learn more a little bit later and maybe think about the words that they say and hopefully pledge and commit to the campaign. Ideally, we'd love to have committee members in every city and every corner of every region of every state. But until then, we'll do what we can with the resources we have and the venues across the valley that have been amazing in donating their space, and instructors from different Zumba classes. We've done yoga events as well. Different things to promote just positive mental health, whether it's getting out and talking about how you're feeling that day, or man, this workout class was really hard, but I feel really good after and I'm glad I did it. Those are just the little things right there that can make the difference in our common conversation, and that's really the point with the Commit campaign, is to break that stigma and just talk about it openly and freely.
If I could convey anything to anyone struggling with this, is don't give up hope and take the time to listen to your body. If you don't feel right, don't ignore this as a symptom. I think just being sensitive and open about it. And if for example, if someone in class came up to me and said, hey, I'm really sorry to bother you. I struggle with anxiety really bad. There's sometimes it's so bad I can't come into class. Would you maybe be willing to, take notes with me, for me? And I'd have no problems doing that. And first of all, that starts the conversation. Yes, it's incredibly uncomfortable for that person because they are exposing themselves. They're making themselves completely vulnerable to someone. For me, if someone asked me that, I would just check in on them if they didn't come in. Hey, are you okay? Just so you know, someone cares. And I guess I would react that way because that's what I would want someone to do.
I would say it's very common for mental health issues to arise in higher education, specifically within housing, because it's where everyone comes together. It's where you're supposed to feel safe where you live. So a lot of it starts from the very first moment they get here, developing those connections and developing those relationships. I train my student staff to make those connections and know people's names, because when you know people's names and you can start to form a relationship, it makes it so much easier to talk about mental health when a mental health crisis does arise. And so how do I initiate those conversations? They're usually initiated by a relationship that I have with that student, or that one of my student staff have with that student. And it's creating a space where we can talk about it, and making sure that the students know from the very beginning they have at least one person in the community they can go to. And if we miss that opportunity to develop that relationship with the student, and we then realize that there is a mental health crisis going on or something that's stirring up, the way that we initiate that conversation is just like, hey, how's it going? I haven't seen you around. Or you're looking pretty down lately. What's going on? I'm one of the staff that work here. depression can be hard to talk about. Suicide, even harder to talk about. Some students don't have someone they can talk to. Some students don't know that all this emotion and mindset that we are, in is natural. Some people don't have that outlet to talk about. And so it manifests in cutting and breaking things and over drinking and getting into trouble. And we as professional staff, we respond to that, There are times when I will notice students walking around who have certain habits, so maybe walking around by themselves or kind of milling about, lingering sometimes, like just looking for someone to talk to but not knowing how to ask to talk to someone. They'll hang around and wait for someone to initiate a conversation, and then I do that. I initiate that conversation. They know that they can come to me, or they know they can go to their student staff, and they initiate that conversation before it becomes something they dwell on and something that seriously affects them. They have an outlet. They have someone to talk to. Sometimes the conversation will be like, oh, well, this is what happened, blah, 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 thank you for talking to me. Sometimes it'll be, nothing's wrong, I'm okay. And we have to push a little bit more, talk a little bit more.
I think the way to break the stigma is so easy, and it's just we need to talk about it.
Just in our state alone, between the ages of 10 to 24, the second leading cause of death is suicide. And so when you see those kinds of numbers and statistics, you wonder, why aren't we doing anything? Why isn't this a common conversation? The first is accidents and car accidents. And so we've got all of these measures and things put in place, but then when we look at these other issues or forms of death or illnesses that we're not talking about, and that's the point of the Commit campaign, is we're going to talk about it.
We want people to start posting photos. We want people to start talking.
The biggest thing is just putting yourself out there. If you never ask someone how they're doing, you'll never know how they're doing. If you never ask someone if they are dealing with some tough times, you'll never know. And if you yourself are dealing with some tough times and you're not saying something, no one's ever gonna know. And so I always tell my students, speak up. Ask students what they're doing. Ask students what they're going through. Ask students what they're passionate about.
I'm going to commit to be an ally for those that live with mental illness. And also I commit to ending the phrase committed suicide from my language. And I also commit to educating those around me when I have the opportunity to. Because what we really want at the end of the day is to help save lives. How do we do that? Change the conversation.
And we want to continue that conversation. We want to create a safe haven for people to share their stories of stigma that they've experienced, and also have that safe haven be a place where people can feel comfortable in sharing that.
I think you need to get people that struggle with depression or want to learn more about it, or people that just care, and everyone needs to sit down in a room and talk about it and explain how they feel and why. And even if there's no reason why, even if someone just says, I don't have a reason, I just wake up every day and I don't want to get out of bed. If you get those people in the same room talking about similar issues with people that care, that will give them a reason to get out of bed in the morning.